He didn't shoot. Consequences.
I have rarely experienced goosebumps simply by the lead character of an action movie being described, but that's the magic of John Wick, the legendary Baba Yaga of the assassin world. The combination of a good story, Keanu Reeves, and a no-nonsense action-packed narrative has ensured back-to-back hits in the franchise, and now we're all set for the fifth film in the series, Ballerina, which is a spin-off between the events of John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum, and John Wick Chapter 4. Before we get to see the Ana de Armas starer in all its glory, it's time for a quick recap of the entire storyline of the franchise. In this video, we'll revisit the previous movies, important events, and the rules that bind the series together. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
I once saw him kill 3 men in a bar with a pencil.
How did it all begin for John Wick in the first movie? Why does a retired assassin return to action? The year is 2014, and we're treated with the beginning of what is possibly among the greatest action franchises ever created. The dark and grim world of John Wick kicks off in New York City, where the titular hero grieves the death of his wife Helen. He is distraught following this personal tragedy, but he finds some comfort in a gift that his wife had arranged for him before her death, a beagle puppy, Daisy. It's a brief reprieve for the grieving man, but just as he starts to warm up to his new life with his four-legged buddy, tragedy strikes again. It all starts with a chance encounter with a few Russian gangsters led by Yosef Tarasov at a gas station. He offers to buy John Wick's 1969 Boss 429 Mustang and his dog, but John refuses the offer despite the subtle intimidation. However, Yosef has his eyes set on the car, and that very night he breaks into John's home as he's sleeping. He's caught surprised and brutally assaulted, but what Yosef and his gang do next make them some of the most hated characters in cinematic history. They kill the puppy as a subdued John Wick watches helplessly, and Yosef and his men get away with John's car. This, my friend, is the moment that the sleeping giant is awakened, and what follows is a long line of blood-soaked vengeance that takes the criminal world by storm. Yosef brings the car to a chop shop so as to remove some of the identifying details, but the owner, Aurelio, immediately recognizes the car and refuses any service. What's more, he even adds in a slap for Yosef, a bold move considering he's the son of the boss of New York City's Russian mafia, Viggo Tarasov. Of course, when Viggo finds out about his son's blunder, he is quick to appreciate the slap and adds in a few punches of his own. Then comes the iconic reveal, where we really find out about John Wick, the feared boogeyman of the underworld. We find out that John used to work for Viggo back in the day, and as the mob boss explains, John was the hitman who would be sent out in the worst of situations. As Viggo describes him as a man of focus, commitment, and sheer will, and someone who once killed 3 men with a pencil, you know Yosef is as good as dead for messing with him. Meanwhile, John has recovered from the brutal assault, and he recovers a concealed stash from his underground safe. This includes weapons and gold coins, and the firm resolve on his face is evident as he prepares to take on the force that deprived him of his wife's parting gift. Viggo offers reconciliation, but John is beyond all that, which prompts the mob boss to send in a hit squad in a desperate bid to save his son's life. Needless to say, John makes quick work of the hired guns, and he heads out to the Continental, a luxurious hotel chain that serves as a neutral ground for the underworld. On the other hand, Viggo hires the services of John's former mentor Marcus to have him killed, and puts a $2 million bounty on his head. Back at the Continental, the manager and John's old friend Winston provides him with more information about Yosef's whereabouts, and the boogeyman heads out to a nightclub called Red Circle. The body count increases further, and many of Viggo's henchmen are killed even though Yosef escapes, and John needs some medical attention afterward. As he rests in his hotel room, a hit woman, Miss Perkins, tries her luck and attempts to assassinate him, but Marcus, who's observing from an adjacent building, fires a warning shot to alert John. A brief scuffle later, Miss Perkins is subdued, and and spills some more information about Viggo and his secret stash. John destroys a large cache of valuable property at a church where Viggo had hidden it away, and even Viggo's not spared when he gets caught in the crossfire. He realizes that his son is as good as dead and reveals Yosef's secret hideout, which gets him killed after a brutal action sequence that has John taking down hordes of Viggo's henchmen. But Marcus is killed by Viggo for secretly helping John earlier, and now even he is not safe from the Baba Yaga. After Winston informs John that Viggo is preparing to leave the city, he races to New York Harbor, and after another vicious fight sequence, the mob boss is killed. Even John is severely injured, but just as he's about to resign to dying from his injuries, he watches a video of his wife on his phone. He gathers enough spirit to break into a nearby pet shelter and treats his wounds. He also adopts a pit bull scheduled to be euthanized and walks away. We couldn't have had a better beginning to the epic journey of John Wick, and the first movie, although quite simple, ensured that the franchise would take off soon enough.
Oh, he has to die.
What makes the Continental Hotel so important in the John Wick universe, and how does it work? Before we delve into the recap of the movies, it's time to revisit some of the crucial elements of the John Wick universe. The Continental is an international chain of luxury hotels, and these function as neutral territories for the members of the criminal underworld. The criminal network is well organized and structured, and the High Table controls much of the network, which we'll explore later in this video. As for the Continental, the hotel is a safe house for hitmen and powerful criminals. The New York Continental is currently owned by Winston, who happens to be a friend of John Wick and started off as a manager. Winston operates with the help of his efficient concierge, Charon, played by the late Lance Reddick in the movies. While both of them play key roles in the John Wick movie franchise, some other Continental hotels have been shown, such as the Rome Continental, managed by Julius, or the Osaka Continental, managed by Koji. There are some rules that must be followed at the Continental Hotel premises, which includes no business on Continental grounds. There can be no fighting or killing in the hotel premises, and violating this has dire consequences, which we see in the first movie itself when Miss Perkins is shot dead by Winston for attempting to kill John in his room. The payment for assassins like John is made with a special gold coin, which holds great value in the underworld. The hotel then provides for just about everything that one can need, and a concierge like Charon is the perfect Man Friday for someone like John Wick. The Continental Hotel also has to abide by certain rules set by the High Table. The hotel grounds cannot be used by those who have been excommunicated, and John Wick finds himself at the receiving end of this rule. The High Table also has the authority to have the last word on the hotel management, and this is something that the last John Wick movie has explored in detail. Now that you're more familiar with the workings of this world and some of the rules, it's time to head back into the recap journey. What extends John Wick's brief comeback from retirement in John Wick Chapter 2? You would think that John Wick would settle into his happily ever after following the events of the first movie, but fate has other things planned for the seasoned assassin. John Wick Chapter 2 starts off with an extension of the first movie, where John infiltrates the den of Abram Tarasov, who is Viggo's brother, and several of his henchmen fall at John's hands. When John finally comes face to face with Abram, the latter is spared on the promise of peace, and John recovers his beloved car and returns home in an attempt to restart his peaceful life. However, John Wick gets a surprise visit from Santino D'Antonio, the Kimura crime boss, and he wants to take advantage of John's brief return from retirement. He seeks the services of the famed Boogeyman, and John cannot refuse the order because he's bound by a marker with Santino, which is a medallion that symbolizes a blood oath. It turns out that Santino had helped him to fulfill the impossible task that he had to carry out in order to retire into a peaceful life with his wife Helen back in the day. Now it's John's turn to pay back, but he still refuses to continue the life of crime and killing. In retaliation, Santino destroys his house with a grenade launcher, and John somehow survives the explosion and heads out for shelter at the Continental in New York City. His old friend Winston reminds him that a marker has to be honored, and John reluctantly accepts Santino's marker. He is assigned the assassination of Santino's sister Gianna, because Santino wants to take her seat at the High Table for himself. The High Table is a council of 12 high-level crime bosses, and they have the last word in the underworld. John heads out to Rome, and he finds Gianna in the middle of her coronation. He seeks her out in her dressing room, and Gianna is rather graceful about the fact that she will be killed. She chooses to go out on her own terms and slits her wrists, and John shoots her in the head to end her suffering. Now, Santino's marker is fulfilled, but it's the beginning of a long cat-and-mouse game with the High Table that John Wick finds himself in. Gianna's trusted bodyguard, Cassian, seeks him out for revenge, and he is attacked as he is fleeing after the job is done. Meanwhile, Santino has also sent his mute bodyguard, Ares, to eliminate John Wick after the hit job so that there are no loose ends, and Santino's sinister act of betrayal is never out in the open. John withstands multiple attacks from Cassian and Ares and their henchmen, and an epic duel with Cassian leads them into the Rome Continental, where they're stopped from fighting further because of the Continental rules. John explains his predicament as he has a drink with Cassian, but the latter tells him that he cannot let the killing of Gianna go unpunished, even though he understands John's situation. Later, the manager of Rome Continental, Julius, gives John safe passage back to New York. But safe is hardly a word that you can use in this hostile world. Santino gives out a contract to have John killed, seemingly to avenge his sister's death, and the invisible Baba Yaga is left to fight numerous assassins who are out to get him. Meanwhile, Winston visits Santino and confirms that his marker has been fulfilled, which means that John is now allowed to harm Santino according to the rules of the underworld. What follows next is another showdown with Cassian in the New York City subway, and after a grueling fight, John is able to stab him in the aorta and leaves him for dead. He is also severely injured himself, and in these troubled times, when assassins from all over the city are stalking him, he seeks out the Bowery King, an underground crime boss. He is intrigued by John's resolve to kill Santino, now a member of the High Table, and he arms him with a Kimber M1911 pistol and bullets. He also directs him to an art museum where Santino will be found, and John takes out most of his henchmen in this attack, including his bodyguard Ares. Santino barely escapes and reaches the Continental, and when John tracks him down at the hotel, he boasts of an indefinite sanctuary inside the premises. Winston calls for restraint, but John is beyond all that by now and shoots Santino dead, breaking a crucial rule of the Continental. The next day, Winston meets John and explains that the bounty on his head has been doubled, and Winston is forced to declare John excommunicado because of his act of assassination on Continental grounds. However, because of their valuable friendship, Winston gives him a head start of 1 hour and even provides him with a marker for future use. John leaves after sounding a warning for all the killers who will be out to hunt him down, and the movie ends as he is formally declared excommunicado. Hundreds of phones around him start ringing, potentially alerting all the assassins, and John starts to run in order to find a safe start.
Whoever it is, I'll kill them. I'll kill them all.
What is the price of messing with the High Table and the rigorous rules of the underworld? How does John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum continue the saga? We've already discussed how the High Table functions with a council of 12 crime lords, and this is effectively the governing body that has authority over the entire underworld. It's considered the ultimate voice of the underworld, and feared and respected by all, including the likes of John Wick and Winston. From what we've seen in the movies, the High Table exerts a strong influence on the politicians, cops, and bureaucrats around the world, and their business goes on like a well-oiled machine. The High Table is led by the Elder, who lives in the deserts of Morocco. When John unwittingly breaks a crucial rule set by the High Table, he finds himself on the wrong side of its justice, and the third movie in the franchise is all about his ruthless stand against the entire organization. John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum picks up from where the second movie left off, and John Wick is on the run after being declared excommunicado for the killing of a High Table member, Santino, on Continental premises. John makes use of the 1-hour window given to him by Winston, and he heads to the New York Public Library to retrieve a marker medallion and a rosary. He is attacked by an assassin who wants to claim the bounty on his head, and even though he wards off the attack, he is injured and needs medical attention. He seeks out an old acquaintance who happens to be a doctor in the underworld, and he's barely able to patch up his wounds before the hour is up and his status is activated officially. All hell breaks loose as numerous assassins attack him, and the body count increases drastically. Realizing Realizing the seriousness of the situation, John finds the head of the Riscaroma crime syndicate, the director, and presents a rosary that allows him to demand a safe passage to Casablanca. The director reluctantly agrees, mainly because John was once a member of the syndicate. Also, this is where we learn that John Wick's birth name was Jardani Jovanovich. On the other hand, a high-table adjudicator is out to deliver justice to those who had helped John, including Winston and Bowery King. They're ordered to resign from their positions within 7 days, and the adjudicator also employs the services of a Japanese assassin named Zero. The director is punished for helping John Wick and stabbed through both her hands by Zero. Meanwhile, John meets Sophia in Casablanca, and Halle Berry is a sight for sore eyes amidst all this violence. It's revealed that John has a marker on Sophia because he had once helped in rescuing her daughter against impossible odds. He demands to be directed to the elder who presides over the high table so that he can discuss the terms to revoke his excommunicado status. Sophia is not too happy about John involving her in such affairs, but she helps out nonetheless and takes him to her former boss, Barada, who knows the elder's whereabouts. Barada states that the elder can only be found by wandering into the desert until one can walk no further, and it's a perilous journey that John must undertake. However, things take a turn when Barada demands one of Sophia's trained Belgian Malinois dogs, and when he is refused, he shoots the dog, which is luckily saved by its bulletproof vest. A fight follows as Sophia and John take down Barada's henchmen, and it's a sight to savor as Keanu Reeves and Halle Berry show off their action skills. Finally, Sophia guides John into the desert and leaves him there, fulfilling his ask. After a grueling walk, John collapses in the desert and he's brought before the elder. On the other hand, the adjudicator and Zero confront the Bowery King after 7 days, and when he refuses to step down from his position, his men are slaughtered as Zero slashes him 7 times with a sword. Back at the elder's table, John pleads for a reprieve, and the elder agrees to forgive him under the condition that he will kill Winston and remain loyal to the high table for the rest of his life. John even severs his ring finger to show his fealty and hands over his prized wedding ring to the elder. When he returns to New York, John is immediately attacked by Zero and his students before he can reach the Continental. Also, Winston refuses to abdicate just like the Bowery King, and when John refuses to kill him, the neutral status of the Continental New York is revoked. An army of armed and armored high-table enforcers are sent to kill John and Winston, and what follows next is possibly one of the best gunfight sequences of the franchise as John and Chiron engage the men in a fierce encounter. Eventually, they're all killed, and an intense climactic duel with Zero sees John defeating him as well. Just when you think it's all over, a dramatic twist takes you by surprise toward the end of the movie. On the roof of the Continental, the adjudicator agrees to parley with Winston after the latter offers his allegiance to the high table. When John arrives, he is shot by Winston and falls to the street below. Only because he's as durable and sturdy as he is, John survives the fall and he is secretly delivered to the Bowery King, who has now taken up in an underground bunker. The two decide to join hands against the high table, and the stakes are even higher for the 4th John Wick movie.
This is your blood.
How does a marker work in the John Wick universe? The marker has a key role in the entire John Wick storyline, and this blood oath is more than just a random promise. It is formally recognized as something that binds two people, and as Santino remarks in the second movie, for a man to grant a marker to another is to bind a soul to a blood oath. A marker is a small round metal object, which indicates a debt of a blood oath between two individuals, and once you open the marker, you will find a divided surface. The debtor presses a bloody thumbprint on one side to commit that an oath is owed, and the borrower does the same on the other side when the oath is fulfilled. The records of all markers are tracked by the Continental, and Winston supervises them himself, ensuring that there are no slip-ups. Usually, the stakes of the marker are so high that people only resort to them under extreme circumstances. After teaming up with the Bowery King, the first thing that John Wick does is strike back at the high table. He travels to Morocco and kills the Elder, and in response, the high table sends the Marquis Vincent with extensive resources to have John killed. The Marquis means business, and this is evident from the moment he summons Winston and his concierge Chiron, and chastises the former for failing to kill John Wick. As a punishment, the Marquis strips Winston of his managerial title and declares him excommunicado, and in a shocking turn of events, chance, he shoots Chiron dead. The Marquis also enlists the service of John's old accomplice, Kane, who is a blind but extremely skilled assassin. This is probably the toughest opponent that John Wick has faced in all the movies, and played by Donnie Yen, this is one of the coolest characters you'll ever find. John tries to get away from the mayhem and seeks refuge at the Osaka Continental, which is operated by his friend Koji and his daughter Akira. When the High Table enforcers reach the hotel, Koji refuses to give up his old friend and fights the army of the High Table. It turns out to be a losing battle, and a stylish bounty hunter named Mr. Nobody interrupts the fight because he deems the bounty on John Wick to be insufficient. John gets away, but Koji dies fighting Kane, even though his daughter Akira is spared. When John returns to New York, Winston, who also seeks revenge for the death of Chiron, informs John about a tradition where he can challenge the Marquis to a duel, winning which would free him of his obligations to the High Table. But he can only request the duel on the behalf of a crime family, which takes John to the Berlin headquarters of the Ruska Roma Syndicate. He is asked to kill a High Table member, Killa Harkan, and he gets the job done at his nightclub with some help from Kane and Mr. Nobody. Finally, the duel is offered, and if John wins, his excommunicado status will be revoked and Winston will be reinstated as manager of the Continental. The terms of the duel are finalized in Paris, and the Marquis chooses a reluctant Kane to fight as his proxy. The rules of the duel suggest that coming late will meet with execution, and the Marquis goes all out so that John never survives the night. He fights off numerous assassins, and a chance encounter where John saves Mr. Nobody's dog from certain death makes him reconsider the hit on John. Even Kane helps him reach the dueling venue on time, and then it's time for the final showdown. Both John and Kane wound each other in the first 2 rounds, and in the 3rd round, Kane seriously wounds John, who never fires his last bullet. It turns out that he has been saving the bullet for the Marquis, and when he finally swaps places with Kane, John blows his head away with a perfect shot. John Wick is later seen collapsing from his injuries, and Winston and the Bowery King bid farewell to John at a gravestone with his name next to his wife. The post-credits scene suggests that Akira is out for revenge, and Kane, who is about to be reunited with his daughter, will be attacked by her. But is John Wick really dead? Well, in all probability, yes. But then, it is tough to believe that the greatest assassin who ever lived will not be back for more. We must tell you that the 4th movie in the franchise will not be so relevant for the content of Ballerina, and this has to do with the timeline.
Looks like you already have.
Where is Ballerina premised in the John Wick timeline, and how does her story fit into the lore? The much-awaited upcoming addition to the John Wick franchise is actually a spin-off project featuring Ana de Armas in the lead role, and the narrative is premised between the events of John Wick Chapter 3 and John Wick Chapter 4. Basically, it's set after John and the Bowery King are in open defiance of the High Table, and it's been reported that Keanu Reeves reprises his role in this movie. Even Chiron, played by Lance Reddick, will be seen in this film one last time, and it all makes sense because of the timeline, since John seemingly dies at the end of the 4th movie, and Chiron is also killed during the events of this film. Ballerina will be all about the story of a ballerina assassin, one among the many we saw training in the 3rd movie, in the sequence where John meets the director. It's going to be another revenge story, as Eve Macaro, the ballerina assassin, is out to get her revenge on those responsible for her father's death. It will be interesting to see how the likes of John Wick and Winston feature in her story. But if the early signs are an indication, we are all set for yet another action-packed entertainer. Marvelous verdict. A mouth-watering prospect to see John Wick in action. I have to admit, I am far more excited to see John Wick fighting it out one more time than watching the actual story featuring the ballerina assassin. The combination of John, Winston, and Chiron is nothing short of magical, and to see them together one more time is simply too good to be true. If the story is handled right, we expect a strong extension to the John Wick lore and a continuation of the franchise, hopefully in the right hands. Do let us know in the comments below what you think of the upcoming movie, and also share with us your personal favorite moments from this recap. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.